Hello, troopers, and welcome to episode 2 of the Real Jumpers podcast. I am your host, Turner Thompson, and joining me are a couple of my friends. Say hello, everyone.
Hello.
It was
Robots are better than monsters. I'll take this to my grave.
Is this going to be something that you do every stream? Just constantly remind people your opinion about monsters?
Yes, because Gundams and giant robots are better than giant monsters.
I mean, I agree with you. Giant robots and Gundams are cool, but...
I have spoken.
There's an entire 2 movies dedicated to this argument.
I mean, my first favorite kaiju is a giant robot, but my second and third are both, like, traditional.
Look, Dennis, you're going to get your comeuppance, man. Look, at the end of the Showa Era, we will throw down. Anyway, so now then, troopers, sign off starting from the top. Nikki, you're at the top.
I am at the top because my name is also Akemi Liar. So I'm Nikki, a.k.a. Akemi Liar.
Oh, I suppose I'm second from the top because my name today starts with a B. Ain't that something?
What is it? Based Gamer?
Based Gamer today. For those listening, I change my name in our Discord call every single day, so nobody ever knows who I really am. The secret is that I'm inside of their walls.
He's in the walls! He's in the goddamn walls!
Dude, I hope you respect privacy, man.
And he's committed to that bit for the past year and a half.
He's been pretty, spot on about it. We've actually helped come up with a couple of his names, too.
It'd be like that.
What's up, y'all? I usually go by Dion, aspiring voice actor, and I'm just here to make fun of the movies Turner makes us watch while we're strapped to the chairs.
I am the resident Gundam enthusiast, Dennis. Gundams forever, kaiju suck. The end, but not really.
Hello, I'm Steven, Stevo, whatever these guys call me, and I just want Turner to know that our friendship has suffered because of this.
Yeah. All right, so today we are watching the sequel to Godzilla King of the Monsters, known as Godzilla Raids Again from 1955. We watched the original Japanese version, which is clearly the superior version. Like, there's just no debates whatsoever. I can't keep this up. This movie sucks.
Your sarcasm is terrible. Dude, it's just dripping with sarcasm. He tried really hard to defend this movie, by the way.
If we were in a poker tournament, I would bet anything against you in that instance.
For the listeners, I just want to point out that I was under the impression that the American version of this movie was terrible. Like, that's what everyone ever says on, like, popular YouTube videos about the Godzilla series, that this movie is awful. At least the Americans butchered it. So I was like, okay, I'll be a purist. I'll go and watch the original Japanese. It was around the halfway point that I realized, like, what am I doing? Why am I forcing my friends to watch this? And no, this is not a case of I hate subtitles, okay? For those listening, I made it all the way to, what was it, Punk Hazard in One Piece, okay? That's like at least 800 episodes of watching subtitles, okay? I can get through subtitles. This movie was awful.
It's more like 700 videos, but, give or take.
Bro's rose-tinted goggles were so rose-tinted he didn't even see all of the black.
That's a good one right there.
No, this is not to say that it's, the worst movie. It's not the worst movie on the planet. I'm pretty sure some of us here have seen far worse movies. I know I have. It's just we found that the American version worked better for us, personally.
I feel like the worst movies in this are the movies that are designed to be worse than this, so they're actually good. I feel like this is pretty bottom of the barrel, like actually bad movie.
I don't know, dude. I watched what was it? Mars of Destruction, that anime movie, and that's really bad. Like, that's not it's like they weren't intending for it to be bad. It was just bad. And then this one, I'd still watch this Godzilla movie over Mars of Destruction. any day.
I just wish we actually had like some, I don't know, reviews or something from like when this movie actually came out, but the internet wasn't a thing back then, so best we could do is maybe like a newspaper clipping or something. But I'm very curious if public opinion on this movie was actually bad when it came out, because it was like, what, a year, you said, after the first Godzilla movie?
So the Japanese version did come out a year later. The American version is, I think it was 59 that it came out. I would need to double check that.
Didn't they change like a lot of the people working on the movie from the first one to this one? So like the people doing the sound was different. The producer was different. The casting person was different. I think a lot of the people were different. And then the budget was obviously very different. And I think this is one of those cases where it shows. It shows that the change in people who worked on it from movie to movie, it shows. Like what's a good today's example of that? I think the only thing that I can think of at the top of my head is the new Descendants movie that came out recently.
But the thing is, you weren't all fans of Descendants.
I know. I'm trying to think of something in nerd terms because, well, I think the Transformer movies, they changed it from who originally did the first two to the more recent ones, and it showed. I think it showed for the better, actually.
So I did look it up. I was correct. The American version, called Gigantis the Fire Monster, did come out in 1959. So it was like 4 years later, which is pretty... I'm curious why that is, but we would like to make a disclaimer that the point of our podcast is to entertain. So if we happen to get anything wrong or mispronounce any names about this movie, we are sorry, and we encourage you to do your own research. If these films interest you, please comment below what we may have gotten wrong or any other fun facts about the film. And I would also like to bring up a few corrections from the last episode. I stated that Godzilla's suit was charcoal gray. While that is the canonical color of Godzilla, it turns out the suit was actually a dark brown. So there's speculation that Godzilla -1 is a reference to this because the Godzilla in that movie is slightly brown. I suggested they may have an optical printer for their double exposure shots or many of the matte shots they had. Turns out they did not have an optical printer. They did not have access to one until around Godzilla vs. Mothra. So how they did a lot of these shots is even more impressive because I understand that essentially an optical printer is just a big layering device, which if anyone knows how After Effects works, it's basically that, but in physical form. The fact that they were able to do all this without the aid of an optical printer is very intriguing. So I'm going to look into that later. The last thing I'd like to say is that I would like to make a shout out to Wikizilla, Wikipedia, and most certainly the YouTuber Big Action Bill for all their useful research on this film. I highly recommend our listeners go watch the series made by Big Action Bill about Godzilla. It is super informative. And if you want like a really deep dive on the history of these films, I highly recommend him. We are a bunch of jerks that just want to laugh and watch these movies.
Consider yourself a jerk. I'm not a jerk.
Now then, ladies and gentlemen, gear up. We're jumping feet first into the heart of sci-fi. This is Real Jumpers. Now let's drop. So let us get into a little bit of background about this movie. Godzilla Raids Again, which in Japanese is called Godzilla's Counterattack, is a 1955 Japanese kaiju film directed by Motoyoshi Oda and with special effects done by Eiji Tsuburaya. It was produced and distributed by Toho, and this is the second film and possibly the longest-running film franchise ever, Godzilla. The only other ones I can really think of are possibly Sherlock Holmes films and James Bond films are one of the only ones that rival the title of longest-running film franchise of all time. In the film, Japan struggles to survive against Godzilla's return, as well as its destructive battle against its ancient foe, Anguirus, who... This movie is the debut of the monster Anguirus, who is a cute little ankylosaurus that I have a big fondness for this guy. He's adorable.
Ankylodukadakadillo. That's all I got from this. That's the only thing I will, from this day, like, you know how when you study for a math test or a history test, you like take in all that knowledge and then once the test is over, you're just like, good, I can forget that, right? That's the only thing I will remember after this.
It's the only thing you're going to remember from this stupid movie.
Ankylodukadakadillo, that was like the one highlight of the day when I heard that. So yes.
Now, Turner, answer me this question. Some of our listeners might be a bit familiar with the Godzilla series. My only experience with it is mainly the video games. I thought Anguirus and Godzilla were supposed to be on the same side, like the Earth defense side.
You are basically correct. This is something that we'll discover later in the films, but Anguirus does kind of become Krillin in this series.
Oh no.
He is
Not Krillin.
Yeah, he does get his ass kicked quite a bit, but
You know, it's a better role than Yamcha.
yes, it is better than Yamcha. So to answer your question, later in the series, Anguirus, or a second generation Anguirus, shows up, and this one is more or less just best buds with Godzilla. He does not show up as often as I would love him to. In fact, his last appearance in the series is kind of sad, and I won't spoil what that is, but it's like, aw, really? That's the last time we see him? No. But you are absolutely right. Like, most people will think of Anguirus as Godzilla's buddy, or at least on the same side as him, because of like the games of Destroy All Monsters or Save the Earth or Unleashed. They all depict him as buddies, and like because the movies do. But Anguirus was the first monster that ever fought Godzilla.
So this is going to get like real interesting later on when we talk about this. Because this looks this sounds like listening to like people who talk about superheroes with like different universes.
You know, it's crazy. You bring up superheroes. So
don't tell me Godzilla's a superhero.
Sort of, but no, that's not what I was going to get into. So Godzilla is one of those series that people tend to forget when they mention like the modern Marvel films as these big connected universe, when Universal Studios did it way before that with their Universal Monsters. And Godzilla, almost all of the Showa era is canon to itself. There are some exceptions. All the movies I'm going to be showing you are canon to each other for the most part. There are some contradictions, but the way that the movies treat it is that they are all like canon. It's one continuous story, or at least separate stories that they decided are now continuous. The production of this film can find its origins around the celebrations of the box office success of Gojira, where the playmakers of Toho decided they needed to make a sequel, and fast. And so the producer, Tomioki Tanaka, was more than ready to set this into motion. He would have Motoyoshi Oda direct and Eiji Tsuburaya in charge of the special effects. Ishiro Honda was the director of the last film, but internally they felt that he would be better suited for more human-level films mostly aimed towards women, because he has kind of like a charming human touch, as they would say. And they also had Oda in charge of the director seat because they felt that he had a reputation of getting stuff done on time. So take that for whatever that is.
So they cared more about punctuality over quality. That's what I'm taking from it.
I mean, in context, they made a pretty smart business decision. They were like, okay, we need to get this out quickly, and we're going to pick the dude who we think is best for the job, who has a proven track record of getting things out and making a lot of money. Because for You See, Child, the only thing stronger than Godzilla is humanity's desire to make more money.
Well, okay, because I'm sitting, because like, how many times have we waited for a movie nowadays, or even a video game, right? And the company that's producing it's like, okay, this is going to come out October 10th, right? And then it gets closer to, and then they come out and say, oh, well, sorry about that. We actually want to put more quality into it and everything. We're actually going to push the release date back to a year later, right? And the fans go in an uproar because whatnot, but when it comes out, for some games and movies, it was worth it. For some others, it wasn't.
I don't know. Like, 9 times out of 10, when something gets delayed, people are actually usually happy about it, because what's that one saying? A delayed game is good, but a rushed game is forever bad. Wasn't that back in the era when you released a video game, it was just out instead of all this live service BS?
Well, I say it's sometimes it's bad, because how bad was the quality for Duke Nukem? That was like an infamous example. They took years to make that, and the quality was bad.
That happens sometimes.
Well, that game wasn't actually being made that long because it kept getting restarted.
It was in development hell.
Like, the actual amount of development time for the final game was still like 2 or 3 years. It's just, it kept getting restarted and shuffled around. Yeah, development hell, exactly.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Godzilla, they had like, at least a year, maybe like year and a half to make Godzilla Raids Again. And to their credit, I mean, for the time, what they produced was fine, I guess, just like the first one. But oh my God.
Especially since they were trying to get something out fast because they were in the middle of this was the era of giant monster films.
That was actually something I was going to bring up, is that this film had steep competition with most of Hollywood. There were films called Them, featuring giant radioactive ants. There was Revenge of the Creature, which is a sequel to The Creature of the Black Lagoon. There was Tarantula, where a giant version of its namesake was terrorizing Arizona. And there was also a film called It Came From Beneath the Sea, about a giant kraken-sized octopus that was all stop motion. So this movie, like, there's also a couple more, but like this year, 1955, was stacked with giant monster movies. And like, I guess you could call those all kaiju, except for The Creature from the Black Lagoon. That guy's just a dude.
Invaders from Mars came out too, but that's not a monster movie, but that was a big movie that came out during the time, right? Yeah.
I think so.
It was a big sci-fi related movie that came out during the time that they competed with.
Yes. This was definitely the whole age of atomic energy has created monsters. What will mankind do now? Like that kind of stuff. So, given the competition, you would think that Toho would bring their A game. Unfortunately, this film is widely considered to be rushed because it simply was. It's just.
And it shows.
I tried so hard to defend this movie, but no.
He did.
It's terrible.
We can attest to it. He tried so hard, and then he kept apologizing.
I did keep apologizing.
Oh, trust me. Oh, I'm saving all. I know I've been quiet for a little bit here. I'm just saving all of my takes on it as we go through the movie because
Dennis has
I
got a
have
lot
opinions.
to say when we get into the fighter details.
Yes, he does.
let me. I'm just gonna be over here cooking. Don't mind me.
Let
Oh,
him
God.
cook.
Oh, no, he's cooking. Okay, so like before, American producers did want to Americanize the sequel that Japan made, but they didn't really care for the plot, and neither did I. So they decided that they just wanted to use the awesome effect shots. They planned to make an original story where Godzilla was a T-Rex and Anguirus was just an ankylosaur, and that they would attack San Francisco, and the movie was going to be called The Volcano Monsters. Toho was aware of all of this, and they were like, cool, makes more money for us. So they made 2 new suits for them of Godzilla and Anguirus, so different suits that were actually seen in the movie, and they sent them over to America. But the production company that was going to do all of this went under. So much like the company, we never, ever saw this version come to light, nor those suits ever again. And no, I do not secretly have them in my basement encased in carbonite. Do not look.
I was so thinking that I would not put it past you if you did.
That's my deep secret. I have them encased in carbonite, just waiting for the market value to go up to the maximum.
Because all of the suits went missing. The only suit the first suit that we have is from a different movie later on, right?
Yes. So all the suits are made of stuff that can rot. So like latex back in the day was like closer to like organic rubber than like the synthetic stuff that we kind of use today. So like bacteria, sun, just about anything could eat away at this stuff. The original Godzilla suit was made out of like latex, hard rubber, bamboo was in there, some chicken wire, and a bunch of other stuff. So like it's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. The only suit.
Everything but the kitchen sink, basically.
Everything but the kitchen sink. And the kitchen sink in this scenario is Mechagodzilla. He's the only suit that's still around because he's not made out of perishable materials. He's just made out of hard plastic.
What was that first part again? What was that first part?
Oh no.
So the giant mech is totally
there-
like
There it is.
he's I'm bailing on this bit.
Yeah, it may be a mech, but it's still Godzilla.
I consider that a win.
I don't think he wins on a technicality on this
show
one.
me a Gundam suit that's been saved. Have they made live action Gundam movies? I don't think they have.
I don't think they have.
They've
Nope.
tried,
Nope.
but that's a topic for a different day.
With the plans for the Godzilla, T-Rex, Anguirus, Ankylosaur San Francisco movie completely down the drain, our old buddy Edmund Goldman, who was the guy who bought the rights for the first movie, and his boss Paul Schreidman acquired the rights and reworked the film into Gigantis the Fire Monster. God, I hate the fact that it's called that. Paul stated that he renamed the monster to Gigantis to imply it's a new monster. That way it would do better than a sequel to Godzilla, because they just were under the belief that a sequel just wouldn't do as well. He would later state that he regretted doing this decision and probably wish he just called him Godzilla. And going forward, I'm probably going to flip-flop between calling Godzilla Gigantis or Godzilla. It's just how I have it in my notes. But a fun little fan theory I have is that while the species is still Godzilla, you could argue the first monster was called Godzilla, but because there's another one, they had to come up with a name with him, so they're like, that one is Gigantis.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Because I did ask a couple people about this, and they don't remember Gigantis being a thing. How many people actually remember the name Gigantis? So they know the second movie exists, but they didn't know that it was named Gigantis.
So it's odds are you could chalk that up to the fact that from the information I was able to get, this movie was not very popular at all in the States. Despite what they did, it never really, I think it never had a TV run until way later, because whoever had the rights to it held on to it for a long time, and it basically was in the theaters, it got out of the theaters, did mediocre, and never showed up on television for a very... Oh, God, sorry. Editor, leave that in. It didn't, last very long. Or basically, it didn't do well. So I'm assuming the fact that it didn't do well and that overall it's not a very popular movie of the Showa era, I think that is the reason why there's this big dissidence, why no one knows about Gigantis. So yeah, that's the background. And we can jump right into the synopsis. So... the movie opens with a 50s... What was the accent called?
Oh, okay. So the narrator that they used, and we talked about this before, and I didn't realize that you genuinely didn't know this. So the narration used in the beginning is called transatlantic accent. And basically, this is the best way to describe this accent. Is think of Alistair from Hazbin Hotel, the accent that he has, right? This is an accent that they use before 1940, when TV and radio was just coming out and everything. It was an accent used so that people could hear them over the radio and TV better, so their words were clearer. For that purpose, that's also the main reason why a lot of music back in radio days is like xylophones and stuff like that. It's because it can be heard better. When audio got better, they retired it. They're like, okay, well, the transatlantic accent sounds nice. We really don't need it anymore because we can hear you. So they changed it. So it's very interesting to see that this 1953 movie, 1953, 1955.
Mm-hmm. The one we're doing is 1959, actually.
Yeah, that is in my notes, isn't it? So it's very interesting to see that a movie made 20 years later has somebody in there using that accent for just a little bit for narration. And it almost gives it a wartime USO promotional vibe, like the accent that they use, or if you go back and you look at old war bonds commercials, it almost gives it that vibe when you go into the movie. So very interesting, very weird. I don't want to say weird.
I was just going to say, I get what you're getting at, that it seems odd, the time period that they're using it in. I feel it fits very well, but to move forward, this style of narration takes place where the narrator is talking about how there are atomic bombs. We are figuring out how to use better rockets that we can reach into space. So there's this awesome footage that I think everyone here has seen of the Bikini Atoll atomic bomb tests, where yes, that is where SpongeBob lives. That's where all the theories that SpongeBob is irradiated and all that stuff comes from that footage. I'm pretty sure if anyone's seen the episode with the bomb has seen the footage of that exploding atomic test. It's really it's so classic.
What, that SpongeBob and his friends are all mutated sea creatures?
Oh yeah, that's the theory, pretty much.
I believe it. Honestly. Yeah, I believe it. Now, will they ever confirm that? Oh, heavens, no.
Probably not. Then again, I've never seen anything past season 5 because all of it's garbage after that. Anyway, so the narrator also talks about, like, we are conquering space. Science knows no bounds. But what about the mystery still on Earth? And then we, like, cut to, like, footage of destruction. This is all footage that's, like, midway through the movie when Godzilla and Anguirus are finally throwing down in Osaka. We get to see a title card that confuses the heck out of me that says Godzilla Raids Again in English. And I know that that's not the title that they used in the Japanese version because we watched it, and there is no English there. It's a completely different title card, but this movie is called Gigantis the Fire Monster, and for some reason they have the English version of the title right there. Yeah, it's called Gigantis the Fire Monster. I'm losing my mind!
Turner. Breathe.
Do you see the pattern starting to form? And this is only the beginning part of the movie.
It's just, this movie is just, it's just, this is like harkens back to an era where, like, I guess, like, standard, like, practices just weren't a thing yet. Like, this is, I think Don mentioned in our, like, last episode that this is, like, during the infancy of filmmaking. And so, like, yeah, like, so stuff that we consider, like, standard practice just didn't exist. So, like, brand recognition, IP protection, all that stuff just out the window. So, like, it's a chaotic era. Anyway, so we get to see a bunch of, we get to see who, like, helped localize the film, and the one credit I want to point out is the guy named Rex Lipton. This guy saved the movie. He's the music editor. He used a bunch of music that was both original and a lot of sci-fi music from, like, other sci-fi films that they probably had the rights to use, was just put into this film and completely saved it. This, like, you know, I'm gonna let Dennis talk about it, like, just how utterly silent this film is.
Throughout the entire movie, and I mean it. Now, granted, there were some scenes where they did get right with no music. Do not get me wrong, but that's like comparing 5 to 10% to 90% of it. Just, if you were to tell me that the only location that they got to film this was a library, an active library where people are, you know, getting books and everything like that, I would 100% believe you. Because how quiet it was, I swear I could hear the camera recording. I could hear every pin drop known to man.
And one thing I like to clarify for the listeners, he's talking about the original Japanese version is, like, how quiet it is. I'm not sure if you mentioned it, and
yeah, that's right.
But,
The original Japanese version has nothing, no sound, or rather, no, it has sound and music, but it's played so quietly and so long. It's as long as a quick little soundboard sound on Discord or something like that. Just 3, 2, 1, there, gone. And it's infuriating with how long it is. Even you know it's bad when you think of Lord of the Rings with its grandiose shots. It still has music to tell the tale without any dialogue.
Was it really that quiet, or was it just the recording we watched? Because even going into Bill's video that we watched for the behind the scenes, I'm sorry if I didn't get his name right, but even he sits there and goes that the music in the Japanese version was beautiful. And I know I didn't hear any of it, but, you know, somebody did. And when you do research on the person that they got to do the music, because they didn't get the original person to do the music. So the person they got to do music in the original Godzilla movie is not the same person they got in the new one. But the new guy is like, he was being very much appraised for how well he did the music for the new movie. And I'm just sitting here going, what music?
Like, honestly, I'm pretty sure the version that we saw is the genuine one because it had the Japanese starting version. Like, I mean, honestly, guys who comment in the bottom, like, if there is one that has way more music, I'm all ears. But the one we saw had like like there was music, like Dennis said, there was music, but like they so sparingly used it. Anyway, so we've been on this for too long. So after this, we get to the point where the main character of the movie, Tsukiyoki, he begins to do a narration where he starts talking about the town that he lives in and all the people that work hard there and they quote unquote never complain. And just the way it was worded sounded so condescending. I got some strong colonizer vibes from it.
Yeah. And this isn't the only time in the movie where it feels like that, but this is definitely like the first and probably the most prominent.
Like, yeah. What they said on paper didn't sound terrible. It was just like when you know the context of the era this movie came out in and you're like really dissecting, it's like, I don't like that.
But at the same time, like what you said, it's during that time. They really could just do whatever.
Yeah. So he goes on to talk about how he works for a cannery, which is part of a huge fishing industry in Osaka and is like one of the main like livelihoods for this whole city. His job is that he flies a plane and he goes out and he looks for giant schools of fish in order to help the whole fishery know where to send their fleets of boats. After a while, we watch him flying around and he does spot a large school where he then radios back to headquarters and we get to see the main female duo of this movie, Hidemi and Suki, operating the telegraph machines and radios. I would also like to point out that Tsukiyoki feels the need to narrate everything. Now, granted, I'm happy he narrates because it breaks up this awkward silence that the original film had all the time, but it's almost like an audiobook. He genuinely feels the need to describe how people are doing things, and he's even aware of stuff that he couldn't even know about.
I also noticed that the narrator has like a Japanese accent, I feel like, and after the whole like narration scene, the two ladies that we see have just like standard American accents.
The accent is subtly there. You don't outwardly hear it in some cases, but it's like a quick little 1, 2, oh, there it was, and then that gone again.
And like, so as those women are talking, Tsukiyoki mentions that he was so happy to talk to his sweetheart, who is Hidemi, and Hidemi is going to be the woman who is betrothed to Tsukiyoki. And we also see that Hidemi and Suki are having a little bit of office
Gossip.
Office gossip. For some reason, I just can't say that. Editor, leave that in.
Two girls chit-chatting about the gossip of the day, who's dating who,
Exactly. It is after this that Tsukiyoki introduces his buddy Kobayashi, who is another pilot just like him with the same job. Unfortunately, we find that he's flying out there doing the same thing, trying to find fish. His plane just starts to malfunction. And it's at this point that Kobayashi calls back and he's like, hey, my plane's messing up. I'm going to be flying down by Iwado Island, which is funny because we don't see Iwado Island from his perspective, so I have no idea how he knows that.
Now, don't mind me as I rear my head in. See, the American version, I'm already just off rip starting this. The American version has the narration where he's describing the scene, and at time, well, the voice acting in this movie, kind of goofy, not going to lie. Pretty goofy. Yeah, kind of like they tried, but it's kind of funny when you're rewatching back. I'm grateful that we had something, because the movie starts, in the Japanese version, no narration, they start talking, and then silence. It's literal plane noises. It's the noises that you hear of a plane flying around. And I'm just like, oh my god. I am just sitting here watching a plane fly around. I feel like I could be watching this on the Discovery Channel. Like, I'm. Is this Plane Week? Did they replace Shark Week?
It's plain.
Ah, man.
But continue.
Don't you want a little bit of calmness in your thrilling monster movie?
No, the first one did it great. Honestly, I really love the fact that they didn't really show Godzilla until like midway through to the end of the movie.
That added suspense, honestly, yeah.
It's so funny you mentioned that. So very close to that. After this, Hidemi and Suki hear that Kobayashi's going down, and immediately they like call Sukiyo. He's like, "Yo, you gotta go save him." And he's like, "I'm on it. I can't find him. Why can't you find him? There's nothing but clouds. Go below them." Oh yeah.
There's
Can
more
I mention the one
clouds.
thing that annoys me about this video, about this movie?
Yeah, go for it.
They're in the plane for the majority of this movie, right? They get in and out of their planes. Like, I hate saying this because it's going to fuel them. Like, pilots get that in and out of their mechs. So anytime they need to get somewhere into the mech, they go. Yes, I know I'm feeding you.
Oh, don't worry, continue. No,
All right.
continue.
But, this guy is in the air. He's flying over the island and he sees his buddy. Like, how he sees his buddy, I don't know, because he's probably expecting it. And he waves out his, and they do this a lot. They wave out their plane like the people on the ground can see them. They did it to the people on the boat, on the ground, to other people. It's like, they can't see you.
Yeah.
Why?
No, and the thing is, going with your example, even in the mechs, you will still see people look reflective, reflect their genuine size. They're not going to be normal size as if you're standing right in front of them. They're going to look like tiny ants or fleas because you're so high up. Here, it just looks like he can see, like he has the visions of a hawk, waving them down as he waves them down, also throwing information at the exact spot. And I'm like, oh, that is not. Mhm. But
I didn't even. Sorry.
No, it baffles me, especially when you were describing that scene of where he's so high up, he's above the clouds. Can't see him I can't see him. The clouds are in the way. Then go down. Your Godzilla's not a threat yet. You don't even know he exists yet. Why are you so high up looking for him? This movie lacks intelligence already off the rip.
That's so true. So, like those two said, that eventually Tsukiyoki finds Kobayashi on the Iwado Island, which is a fictional island. I looked into it. And they land and they start having gossip. Also, Kobayashi mentions that he hurt his arm, but they're all talking about, they're talking about girls, basically. It's really funny. And so...
Dude breaks his arm and gets saved and still has time for more office gossip.
Exactly. And so, as if answering our pleas for something interesting to happen, we hear a brand new roar that's different than the original Godzilla roar. We hear the roar of Anguirus off in the distance. And we just, the movie's to heck with suspense. There he is. You can see him right through the crack of this crevice. There's Godzilla, because there's this big plateau that has to be a couple 100 feet above the beach, and we see Godzilla. And then suddenly, we also see a brand new monster that we mentioned before. We see Anguirus for the first time. Anguirus is a fun-looking, partially inspired by dragons, partially inspired by crocodiles, armadillos, ankylosauruses, and he's a fun little guy. I like him.
Looks like a dog.
If I had to describe him, I would say he's like the Ankylosaurus mixed with an armadillo, but more spiky.
Yes, he is very spiky. Which, fun fact about those spikes, they're made out of paper and covered in rubber paint, I think is what it was. So they're not dangerous at all.
Seeing Anguirus or Anguirus first out of all the movies, because like I said, I grew up in a time of where I played a little bit of Godzilla Destroy All Monsters, and Anguirus was one of them. And I'm like, okay, then maybe he was introduced later on, I didn't realize that, first monster that we see Godzilla fight is Anguirus. And I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, I love revealing that to people who have even just the basis level of information about this series, that they're like, wait, what? It was Anguirus? It's no, again, like that. It kind of harkens back to what we were talking about before. This movie has such low impact on like the zeitgeist of like general population that no one knows about. Even among people who are casually fans of Godzilla, don't really know about this film. So after this, Godzilla and Anguirus are tussling up above on the plateau, and one of the pilots mentions out, "What are those things?" And I'm like, "Really, man? You sure you're not aware of like odds are the most important thing that's happened in the last few years? Giant monster."
Didn't they say Godzilla attacked the year prior?
Exactly,
Yes.
He did attack the year prior, and we get confirmation about this later in the movie. Even though this movie kind of tries to behave like at least the American version likes to behave like the previous one didn't happen until it's conveniently did. It's weird.
Well, why though? How would you do that?
But wow.
I don't know. Oh god, this movie. So also I would like to point out that like I will cut them some slack for this. This is the first time they ever did two monsters fighting each other. Like this studio, this is also the movie that is credited with the whole concept of two giant monsters fighting and destroying a city. Like most people credit this movie for coming up with that. So that is like the modicum of respect I'll give this film, is that it did come up with that concept. They didn't know how to do monster fights yet.
Yeah,
like at
you're
all.
using the word fight a little loosely there, man.
Yeah, so the word I used earlier, tussle, is a lot closer to it.
Tussle is still too strong a word. It's more like
Scrap.
more like play fighting.
Pushing back and forth.
I would say that like they're slapping each other with rubber gloves.
In some scenes, they are rubber gloves.
Godzilla looks like he's trying to pull something out of his dog's mouth.
Yeah, that is our joke. The dog picked up something like, hey, what do you have? Drop it!
Or they look like siblings trying to play wrestle, not knowing how to wrestle. And then it's like, okay, you need a break? Yeah, I need a break. Okay, I'm ready now. All right, let's go again.
And what's
Ah!
even worse is that, like, they shot it at, like, didn't you say, like, in the first movie they slowed the footage down a little bit to make Godzilla seem, like, a little more imposing? And then...
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, and then in this one, when they're fighting, it's shot at regular speed. So literally imagine, like, ignore the costumes for a second. These are two grown men just, like, going at each other, but not actually trying to hurt each other because, they're still filming something. But then they're just, like... It's so hard to explain without a visual aid. But they just aren't really doing anything. And then suddenly they're on the ground. And then, like, there's a shot of, like... It's like a Dragon Ball Z reaction shot. Where it just shows one of the people watching, like, oh... It just makes no sense.
Yeah, I think you have the perfect example.
It's so funny. I'll cut him some slack, but it does look bad and really awkward. So like Godzilla and Anguirus tussle until they finally are like, oh no! As they like toss over the side of the cliff and they fall into the water. At which point, Kobayashi and Tsukiyoshi take this opportunity to get back to one of their planes. I don't know how they get the other plane. Apparently it had engine problems, but whatever, that doesn't matter.
Don't worry about it.
And they are able to escape. And one thing I'd like to point out about this shot is that this was the most dangerous shot of the entire film when Godzilla and Anguirus fall into the water, because there were actual actors in the suits when this happens, because they wanted to just do it without the actors in it and just throw the suits down, but the suits would just float, so that wouldn't really work. So they had to have the actors in it, and they tossed them down into the water, and they had like 20 guys on the wing just ready to just beeline it in there to get them out of there. Like the actors almost drowned. It's like,
Yeah, I mean,
Jesus.
they're basically waterboarding themselves at that point.
exactly.
Back in the days where labor laws were just a little bit more lax.
Like, have you
Yeah,
ever?
like,
Sorry.
I was just gonna say, for those who want to go and watch Big Action Bill's videos, which I will link in the description, he goes into like what the culture of like working for their company was, and it's definitely like it's not union, but it's interesting. There was a weird like sense of loyalty and like get it done to get it done kind of vibes. Like again, the YouTuber I'm gonna link is gonna like has much more in depth like explanations of what it was like to work on set. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. What did you want to say?
No, I was just gonna make the observation that because labor laws and like industry standard practices weren't a thing back then, you could get away with a lot. And also, have you ever tried to swim in anything that's not a swimsuit? Because when stuff gets wet, it gets really heavy. Trying to swim in any kind of clothing is ridiculously hard. Now imagine wearing a full body suit and trying to swim. They were absolutely about to drown.
Oh my god. I just started imagining swimming with just baggy jeans, and I already hated that. So moving on, the two pilot brothers, or it should be, they're not brothers, they're just a duo. They make it back to land, and they immediately contact the authorities, who just believe them because they also just saw a giant monster last year. They're not taking any chances.
Smart.
Very fair.
Yeah. So they bring out all these pictures of old school, I love this stuff, old paleo art, the kind of stuff where T-Rex is dragging his tail and he's big and chunky and derpy, and it was back when they believed that dinosaurs were slow, dumb, and not really like active. This is way before Jurassic Park. And while they go through the images, eventually they find an image in a book, which is a real book called The Dinosaur Book by Edward Colbert, but the image they add in the book is brand new. It is a piece of concept art, I'm pretty sure, of Anguirus, and Kobayashi is like, oh, this is it. And then so this guy who straight up looks like Colonel Sanders is like, oh no, this is terrible. And this guy looks like Colonel Sanders, dude.
I never thought of it like that.
Fried chicken is really big in Japan.
Really? I didn't know that.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
it is. You think it's an American Southern thing? No, it is so much bigger over there.
The only difference is where we Americans eat it like all the time. It's mainly done in Japan for like holidays.
Mm-hmm.
Oh
Like
my
New
god, I
Year.
actually remember hearing about
Yeah,
that.
we've had this conversation before. New Year's and Christmas are insane.
Oh yeah, like people will camp out, wait for those boxes to come out, and they will go on sale, and it's effectively a frenzy to get one, because it's a whole meal, not just a chicken and biscuit meal with no drink. It's a full-on 5-course meal, I think.
Especially since they'll collab with like the game companies, animes, and get exclusive like box arts and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, around the holidays there are so many game and anime collaborations with just whoever sells fried chicken.
Yeah, that's hysterical, but a little off topic. anyway,
That's very off topic. That's chicken.
so anyway, we also get to see that Dr. Yamada is back, and he looks like he's just done with it. Like he genuinely looks like, are you kidding me? There's more.
It's I warned you this would happen, and this is what you get for not listening to me. Screw you all. I'm out.
Mic drop.
Really? Because I saw it as a different way. This is one thing I see more with the Japanese version. He looks depressed.
Well, okay, let's think about that real quick, okay? In the first movie, right, the sole cause of that we found, the sole thing that was made to destroy Godzilla was made by a scientist who Yamada greatly respected, right? And the scientist died, taking the secret of that weapon with him because, one, didn't think it needed to be remade. Two, it was that dangerous of a weapon. So the fact that these people, A, didn't listen to a single damn word he said, sorry for the French, all right, and now there's another one, and now thinking that the oxygen destroyer?
Yes.
Is we can't remake another one, And now this person that I greatly respected has died for nothing.
That is depressing.
So I would be super depressed too. I'd also be really, really mad.
So, and then the thing that makes me upset is that Dr. Yamada refers to Godzilla as Gigantis, which I already had like a real rant about that, but it pisses me off. His name is Godzilla. Why is he Gigantis? Is this not Godzilla?
Why did they change the name to Gigantis again?
Because at the time, the producer of the movie decided Godzilla's not gonna catch on. Let's go ahead and change it so it'll be, fresh and new. After the movie was released, he immediately regretted his decision.
Because he chose the incredibly basic name of Gigantis.
It's a very American name too, if you think about it.
It is.
That just makes me sad.
And then they go on to name Ankylosaurus. And I love the way the guy says this. Ankylosaurus, killer of the living. It's just...
Back with that transatlantic accent, man.
No, and now we're back to the no intelligence because this entire thing, this entire plot point, not even plot point, this entire section, they go by such fact, and I'm like, how do you know? No. You barely had enough time to study the first giant monster that came by, and now you're coming in with all this information about Ankylos, who you first met? No. How do you know? Tell me, where was your giant monster research division? Anywhere. And where was it in the first movie? Well, did they take a siesta?
I wonder if they stopped at a library to get that book before going to that meeting.
You know what? Probably they did.
They probably
just
did.
On the way to the meeting, just, we need reference material.
They just
City library!
We forgot to pick up the milk.
And so, like, Colonel Sanders just starts reading the book, and he's like, I got a few quotes. It's like, enormous in its size and tremendous in its strength. Somewhere, although it is not known when, these creatures may come alive after years of hibernation due to radioactive fallout, which goes back to what Dennis just said.
How do you know?
How the hell do you know that?
How do you know
they
that?
hired the XCOM propaganda team to do their research.
I guess, because at this point,
It's that propaganda team from the World Wars that they just always seem to know what was up.
oh my god.
And then they also, this is a really neat little thing that I kind of like. So, kaiju are always plagued by the square cube law. And so, like, getting big means you can't function. It's really lame and it ruins the fun. But, so, in order to describe how a giant monster can work, because nerve endings can't process information as fast as if you scale it up, that just wouldn't work. They actually describe Anguirus as having brains throughout multiple parts of its body, which is a lot like an octopus, because an octopus is interesting because it has a central nerve cluster in its head, and then it has nerve clusters that go down all of its arms. And shockingly, its arms can kind of think on their own. Like, it can tell the arm to do something in particular, but if it wants to, it can just like, screw it, and just let the arm do its thing. It's really interesting. So, they also say that Anguirus and Gigantis are part of a family called the Anguirus family for some reason of fire monsters, and that they are going to wipe out the human race. And it's just because Godzilla is supposedly a theropod, and like I forget what the clade Ankylosaurus is from, but it's a completely different clade. And like anyone who, I'm pretty sure they knew that back then, so it just shows that they weren't really doing their research. But anyway, so after they do this whole description of what Gigantis and Anguirus are, they talk to Dr. Yamada. Is like, yo, do we have any way to stop this? And Dr. Yamada's like, fuck no.
Oh, yeah.
He died. He died a year ago. I told you not to do this shit. Like I said, I would have been so mad. I would have popped off.
At this point, if I was Dr. Yamada, I would have been mad. No. There's nothing. You know what we can do? Pray.
Run.
Literally pray that he goes away.
Ah, man.
Pray that he goes away.
Throw up the peace sign and turn your opacity down.
So,
yes.
you know, so to like really hammer home that point of how screwed they were, like Dr. Yamada gets the people who are in the meeting to start playing Bill Nye the Science Guy in order to explain like what's going on. They show this whole montage of like, this is what Earth was like. This is what this Earth was like a couple hundred years later, and then, or excuse me, a couple million years later, and then they show these two little. Oh, they look like they're straight out of Eraserhead, which is a movie I do not recommend. These two little creatures come out of like the primordial ooze, and they're like, rah, yeah, and they're like, these things are fire monsters. They come from the element of fire. Everything of their being is fire. I'm like, okay, sure, why not? And then they start showing more footage of like, this is a really long-winded thing, but they like talk about like the origins of these monsters. We get to see a lot of slurposaurs, which is a fun term. That's a fun rabbit hole to go down, what a slurposaur is. Basically, it's like old school, we need a dinosaur in our movie, but we don't have the budget, so let's go get an iguana and glue some like extra spikes on its head and call it a T-Rex.
A lizard. It's a lizard.
It's a wee little lizard.
It's a lizard.
Now, Turner, you may,
Yes.
And that means English, the Anguirus is a turtle.
may I interject here?
Yeah.
Now, this is where I will actually sing the praises of the Japanese version because it did one thing right. One of the things right, might I add. Very few, very rare, but it happens. Of where instead of that whole weird Bill Nye the Science Guy kind of explanation of how they're created, which in itself makes no sense because if they're fire monsters, then that means the water should be boiling. But either way, the Japanese version shows the original at the first attack with the first Godzilla. It's quiet. The whole there's no sound. They close the windows, close the blinds, and they see the attack the year prior. And no one is speaking a word, watching this destruction happen in Tokyo. And to me, I'm like, I like that. Because it's not like in here where they're not, it's a whole new beast. It's another generation of the thing that decimated us. Where honestly, we were lucky to survive. And then it cuts from there. It finishes the scene, and then into the next one. Go ahead, Turner.
Like Dennis said, like they show footage of the first movie, and then like in the American version, they do all the Bill Nye the Science Guy stuff, then show the footage of the first movie with them talking over the whole thing, which is weird because it means they acknowledge the first movie, and yet they don't call him Godzilla, they call him Gigantis. It pisses me off. Doesn't matter. So Yamada then has a bright idea because, like I said in the first movie, Yamada has this awesome thing called deductive reasoning, and he thinks that it is possible that Godzilla or Gigantis is sensitive to light because he believes that it may remind them of the H-bomb test that awoken them. And so he must be remembering the time that Puppetzilla killed the paparazzi.
Yeah, they did.
So
Those men didn't die in vain. Good for you guys.
So Yamada has the idea of, okay, maybe kind of like with deep sea fish or other creatures that are drawn to light, why don't we turn off all the lights and drop flares out in the ocean whenever Gigantis gets close, and maybe it'll draw him away. And it, like later on we'll talk about it. It actually is a great idea. It works awesome. And honestly, it probably makes Yamada pissed to think about like, oh God, is this really how easy it was?
On top of the already fuming nature of the situation.
Yeah, and he also brings up that he's worried now that there are two monsters, double the trouble with absolutely no way of killing them. And he does have this awesome quote that Nikki recommended that I bring up, and I totally agree with her. So here's the quote that Yamada ends the whole scene with. He says, "Heaven help us, our fate is no longer in the lap of science, but in the lap of the gods," which does touch upon one of the few themes that I think exists in this film, but I don't know what they're saying, and we'll get to it later. So after this, it cuts to Hidemi and Tsukiyoki. They're on top of like their office building, and they're talking about like, oh God, I wonder what's going to happen if the monsters attack. And they like Hidemi brings up how she thinks Tsukiyoki is so brave, and Tsukiyoki. And I found out this is mostly an American thing. This is not big in the Japanese version, but it still pisses me off, so I'm going to say it anyway. Tsukiyoki has this issue with being quote-unquote brave. At what point did anything he do suggest that he is not brave? The guy survived an encounter with Godzilla and correctly figured out when to leave and how to stay safe by hiding in a cave. So you know what? Screw this guy. He's really brave. He's got some serious imposter syndrome. He says a funny dubism where he says, banana oil, which is just a fun little, like, it's an old school version of saying, poppycock, or this, and it has to do with, like, dubbing, and it's a fun little story.
It was brought up by George Takei, because George Takei did an interview where he actually said, because why not just say poppycock, right?
Yeah.
Because that was a word that was used big back then. Banana oil was the only word that they could find that matched the Japanese word that was said during that scene.
Exactly. And so it's a funny little scene. And I'm so sorry, Dennis. I can hear you want to say something. Go for it.
No. It's effectively that, but it's hard to describe with this little scene here with how the differences in the dubbing changes the scene. Because the thing I've noticed so far is that this movie focuses a little happier, a little upbeat, little chipper moments here and there. Granted, with Tsukiyoki having imposter syndrome is evident throughout the movie. Like, full on, even though, like what you said, Turner, you survived a Godzilla attempt. Look at what happened to the people who did survive. And all you got was your friend got a slightly bruised arm or possible broken arm? Call that a win, my guy. Have more confidence in yourself. You literally flew out of there.
It's just, it frustrates me. So their whole conversation gets interrupted as they see jets flying over, and he starts doing this narration where he's talking about how like the whole city is about to go to war. And I thought that was pretty cool. We then smash cut to like the war room where all the officials are trying to figure out what to do, and they set up their game of 40K, and they're in the deployment phase because they're trying to figure out where Gigantis is. Fortunately, we don't have to wait long, as actually George Takei shows up on as a voice actor, like comes up on the radio and tells them, we found Gigantis, we have found Gigantis, we know where he is, and they're like, got it. So they set him up on the board, and then so the opposing army then gets their word in as another actor comes over the radio and says, we found Anguirus, we know where he is too. And they put a little thing on the table, and now they're ready to play their game of 40K.
Now, let's jump back over to the Japanese version real quick. The past two scenes, say it with me now, all quiet with nothing. Nothing, no music, the jet engines, them talking, and then even in the war room, I actually do not remember if they were, they didn't have anything to type on, correct? At the time?
They had typewriters, I know that.
I don't remember if there ever, if there were any. I don't remember if there was one there. It would make sense if there was one there, if they're getting reports. But at the same time, it's still quiet. You hear them talking. You hear them trying to plan out their phases, trying to make sure which stratagems to choose. But it's still the same quiet throughout.
The silence is deafening. All we hear is mostly ambience. It's just dumb. Anyway, so with this information, the Japanese government send out fully armed battle cruisers to find them, and they warn the coasts of Japan that there's potential of a landing of Gigantis at any moment. The entire nation's assets are then put to full use. Submarines, radar, sonar, everything the 20th century has, they're throwing at these prehistoric threats. As the news pours in, there are many people that turn to the government for aid. There are some that turn up to churches looking for help from the divine, while others remained at home. And from home, we see that all the major players of the cannery are held up at I'm going to assume it's the boss's house / doctor / father of Hidemi, because they're all gathered around a radio trying to listen in and see what's going on. There's a part here where I don't get it. It's so silly. Tsukiyoki's like, he tells the doctor, boss, father guy that that they should let him take a crack at this monster. And I'm like, what are you going to do?
Take a crack at it? The hell does that mean?
I know, it's baffling.
The intelligence leaves again. Because the scene, again, happens the exact same way in the Japanese version, where he just wants to fight it. And I'm like, yes, you're going to fight it with your dinky little plane.
Is that the first recorded instance of nah, I'd win?
I think it is.
Like, yeah, boss, let me take a crack at him. I'll give him the old 1-2, the old 1-4.
Like, if they had like worded it differently of him saying, hey, can I quit so I could join the military and help fight this monster? I think that would make way more sense. It's just the way it's worded. It sounds like, like, it's
Put him there.
It's so stupid.
Put him up. Put him up.
He needs to go and eat his can of spinach before he goes fight. Thank you
Because
for...
he eats me spinach. So, okay, so after this, we do, like, this is a fun, like, I wish more movies would do this again. There's a, like, nice throwback. We have the classic news article spinning into frame as it does a transition where it talks about Gigantis may bypass Osaka, which, like, because they get the news that, like, they thought he was going to make landfall in Osaka, but it turns out no, he's kind of been, he goes in a different direction, and so, with this news, what do the people of Osaka do? I give you all one guess.
Ooh, teacher, may I?
Yes.
They decide to party, even though he can possibly show up.
Exactly.
He was right from the beginning. He should have destroyed the infrastructure.
Yeah, so the people of Osaka, their hubris knows no bounds. They decide that, oh, a newspaper said Gigantis is probably not gonna go for us. F it, why not? So, like, there's narration from Tsukiyoki about, like, how the entire city's entertainment sells out across the board. There's nothing to worry about. The narration is talking about, like, everyone feels invincible, that everything's good, forget your worries. And we even get to see a cool...
Hakuna Matata.
Hakuna Matata. Yes. And then we get to see, like, what... Honestly, we get to see what Japanese nightclubs used to look like back then.
Very classy looking, honestly.
Yeah. We get to see Tsukiyoki and Hidemi are caught up in all of this, and they go to their favorite nightclub, and they are doing a little bit of slow dancing, and it's really cute. It's really adorable. I like it.
Wasn't it at this point you looked at the movie and wonder and realized, what am I putting my friends through?
No, that happens after Godzilla and Anguirus are done fighting.
That was during the whole prisoner thing.
No, the prisoner thing's entertaining, I'll be honest. Like, I like that. It's dumb, but I like it.
I thought it was in this moment when they're slow dancing and all this. Well, Greg, there is music in the Japanese version. I know I sound like a broken record, but I'll take at this point that any modicum of sound that is not conversation or monster noises.
Exactly.
Or, background information. Give me background music in this instance over the crushing silence.
Crushing?
Sounds like another monster movie.
I think I should become a Hollywood producer.
Write that down.
But then it just continues with them dancing. Nothing's happening other than singing and all this. And Turner, take it away.
So the hubris of man knows no bounds. And guess what? While they're slow dancing and they're talking about how much they love each other and they're going to get married, there's an alarm that sounds off and an intercom in the nightclub says, so, yeah, about that. He's coming.
We were wrong.
Attention, you are all idiots. He is coming this way.
It's just like we were wrong. You guys might want to run for cover. Get your shit. Get out. Don't forget the curtains.
You know how you were trained to do calm and orderly fashion? Because we were wrong, scream and panic now. And it proceeds to scream and panic.
They started scrumming around like how ants do when you destroy their home.
Oh my god, yes, it is exactly like this. It's at this point that the entire city goes into a blackout because, like, the military has at least their shit together. And I think there was a little thing that Steve pointed out that he thought was interesting about this whole blackout.
Yeah. Like, I get everyone getting the blackout order at the same time, but every single car turns their headlights off at the same time. And I get that's just like a part of the set, but there is no way in hell every single car turned off their lights at the same time and continued to keep on driving in complete darkness after that.
So stupid.
Especially the military. Oh my god. I didn't even think about it until you brought it up, Steve. We had firefighters and military personnel. Tanks. How did the tanks drive?
Exactly. If you've ever tried to drive in the pitch black at night, like in a place with no headlights, maybe just the stars and the moon for your light, you're not going anywhere. Like, unless it's maybe like a full moon, then you can't see.
I will attest that there have been times where I have driven without my headlights on because I don't know how to work the headlights on my car. That's a different story.
Street lights.
Yeah, so there's street lights. But when you're coming down, like, say, my road that my house is on, there are no lights. Like, we're talking fog in the middle of the night. It looks like Pyramid Head is walking from the abyss. That's how ambient, creepy, dark it is. Yeah, you're right. I ain't going anywhere. I'm going to park my happy ass and I'm going to sit there, or I'm going to get out and run on foot.
Nah, what you guys have failed to notice is that clearly everybody in the movie, because of their close proximity to the radioactive dragon thing, has developed night vision as their DNA breaks down.
You're right.
They all turned into mutants from X-Men.
Is that the fallout from the first movie? Is that people slowly... That's the one beneficial thing that happened from Godzilla irradiating the countryside, is that everyone can see in the dark now.
It gets cool before it gets worse.
Before the cancer sets in.
We should do a bonus episode on if the X-Men could beat Godzilla.
You know
Honestly,
what?
if at least like 10 people comment about that, I'll do it. That'd be a fun podcast episode, bonus episode.
No. Now it's got me thinking about it, but that's a topic for another day. You like what you said?
It is a topic for another day. So before long, we get to see that Toho has brand new miniatures. We get to see missile platforms, tanks, and jets are all getting into position. The jets are flying over. They're getting ready to drop the flares to try and make Godzilla piss off into another direction, while all the tanks and missile platforms form a barrier around the edge of the Osaka Bay, because they're like, oh god. Luckily, I'm glad to see that the military has learned that A, giant fences don't work, and B, machine guns don't work. So they just decided to bring everything they've got. It isn't long before they spot Gigantis in the bay, and we hear him use the wrong roar, because in the American version, to imply that he and Anguirus are related, they often share the same roar sometimes, and it pisses me off because when I was a little kid, I knew distinctly the difference between Godzilla and Anguirus' roar, and when I heard them coming from different monsters, I'm like, huh? This isn't correct.
Godzilla was doing his best Anguirus impression.
It's a really good one. It was also the moment that I saw Godzilla like coming out of the water that I realized that like this is definitely a different director's work, because the mise-en-scène, it just seems worse in this movie, and the way that they frame shots just seems terrible. And for our listeners, for people who don't know what mise-en-scène means, it is in film production, mise-en-scène refers to all the elements that comprise a single shot. That includes, but is not limited to, the actors, setting, props, costumes, and lighting. The director of a play or film is called in the metteur en scène, literally, one who puts on the stage. This is a term that's often used just like how a shot is constructed in, like you could say like the head of cinematography and the head of filmography, like their whole job is mise en scène. And I could just tell that like it's just bad in this movie. Like how they frame things is just like, because I remember the first Godzilla, well, granted, it had a lot of static shots. It also had a lot of interesting, fun angles to do stuff. This movie just seems to shoot everything playing on like it's a film, like it's a play, which is what old movies used to do. That was the only thing they had to compare themselves to. They were comparing themselves to old theaters, so they would just shoot things straight on. It's just, I hate this movie. Anyway, so as Godzilla gets closer, the planes drop their flares, and here's one part where I will praise this movie. I could tell that the technique that they were using for double exposure has gotten a lot better, because the flares that they drop from the planes are not literally coming from the miniatures. They're double exposed onto the footage, and I could tell that there are like these assets that they had pre-set up, and they're much higher fidelity. And granted, they don't track very well, but they have like a higher fidelity to them that's a little hard to describe. They're a little punchier, like meatier, has like more like a little je ne sais quoi to it. I also want to point out that as Godzilla gets closer, that this suit was designed to be more flexible, and yet for some reason the way it looks is that it looks really stiff. It's hard to just, it's stupid. I hate it. And the reason why it was designed to be more flexible is because this is the first time they're going to have Godzilla fight another monster. The Godzilla from the first movie just simply could not do that. His suit is basically immovable.
Don't even get me started on the new Godzilla model's teeth.
Oh,
His
this
big-
puppet's teeth are awful.
I miss the old googly eye Godzilla. I have to admit it. I miss the old googly eyes, because at least the googly eyes made it look cute and appealing in some way. This just looks like the red-headed stepchild that finally got their moment to shine.
Like a child's last-minute school art project.
Oh my god, it does look like that.
Yeah, because you see the teeth. They're just spewing out from the mouth in different directions. I'm like, that's not how teeth work.
He looks like he has a mouthful of toothpicks.
Exactly. Which is funny, because Shin Godzilla actually has that look, but it looks scary because it's the modern age and they know how they're doing. So the two things I want to point out. The suit Godzilla, his teeth, he's got like these two goofy buck fangs. And then the Puppetzilla has like what Tyrell said, like has toothpicks that go in every direction. There's no semblance of like, there's only one shot. It's just later, and I'll point it out, that actually makes the puppet look menacing. And otherwise, it's just inferior in every way. It's so stupid. So, the military postures for a possible landfall, and it turns out that it seems that the flares are working. Godzilla seems to be interested in it. And as Godzilla is taking interest in these flares, we cut to the military headquarters, where they learned that many of the areas have already been evacuated. And so they successfully switched to the movement phase of their Warhammer 40k game they're playing to try and get more and more citizens out of the area. And we see that new sectors are being evacuated and citizens are heading for the hills. Tsukiyoki and Hidemi are taking a car and being complete and utter jerks, to be completely honest. They take a car to try and evacuate, and they just plow. I mean, not literally plow, but they drive through this like huge thoroughfare that all these people are using to get out of the city, and they're just like, oh, the lower class seems to be getting in our way. Our automobile will make short work of them.
Not like they had their own working jobs like 2 minutes ago.
Also, I am fully convinced this car has an unlimited gas tank because of everything this car went through at this night. I am 100% positive this thing has an unlimited gas tank.
That's such a funny observation. I never even thought of it that way.
Because of everything it goes through. The subsequent scenes, it's like, cars back then didn't have that much gallons in gas. Did? No, I don't believe so.
Let me see.
And while you see, I will bring up the fact that there's a fun little bit here that happens where they cut back to Godzilla / Gigantis, and he's looking at the flares and he's like, ooh, So he turns around and his tail takes out a lighthouse, which it's kind of funny because a lot of people like to think that is a reference to the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, where in that movie, the Ratosaurus, or Rhinosaurus, I think is its name, attacks a lighthouse, which is also a reference to the short story that the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms is based on, where in the short story, a sea monster attacks a lighthouse. So it all comes full circle. It's like 4 layers of meta. Seeing this, the military begins to gloat because, again, the hubris of man knows no bounds. They're talking about like, oh, that dumbass. Oh, we got him. That dumb bastard fell for it. Woo! Nothing bad could possibly go wrong.
Ding dong.
Okay, I got an answer for you.
Ooh, okay, what's the answer?
Based on the data from one vehicle, 13 fuel ups and 1355 miles of driving, the 1950s Ford F1 gets a combined average miles per gallon of 1093 with a 1.54 mpg margin of error. Okay, that's like car talk, and I don't understand that.
So an average of 10 goes to 10 to 11 miles per gallon.
Yeah, that's about the same as it is today. It's not much better.
How many gallons did it hold? That's a good point. And also, I remember, like, okay, I watched Top Gear. I'm pretty sure most people in the world have watched Top Gear. British one, the European one's the better one. Those cars didn't drive fast. You know, we can get up to like 100 miles per hour at the current moment. I think those only went up to like 20.
I don't think that's true. I think those cars could go a lot faster than that, but regardless, like, I don't know. I just can't. 20 miles per hour feels like painfully slow today, and I don't think that's how, like, whatever. Doesn't really matter.
The Model T went up to 45 miles per hour.
Yeah, I knew it. So, I'm going to try and get over this part as quick as possible because it's boring. So, Tsukiyoki takes Hidemi to her father's house to try and drop her off there. Turns out Kobayashi is also there, and they say, hey, the boss is back at the cannery. We need to go help him. Like, okay, sure, why not? So they leave Hidemi behind, and they tell her, hey, you're going to be safe here. This is out in the boonies. Nothing bad's going to happen to you. Should Godzilla show up, you can just run into the hills.
You don't sound very certain of your telling me I'm safe. You know, that's...
Also, I would like to point out one thing here. Why is my boss effectively at the kill zone of Godzilla, literally watching it box office seats like he's a zoo exhibit? Like, ooh, that's Godzilla, or in this case, Gigantis.
What? I mean, you're not going to find a better zoo exhibit anywhere.
You're right, but at the same time, I'd rather not take the cancer. The super cancer coming off of Godzilla's radiation being that close than seeing this zoo exhibit.
Dude, you'd be surprised what people do for box seat tickets.
Good point.
No, you wouldn't.
I see exactly Tyrell's point here, that like there's a certain part of me that thinks that he just wants to see. like he wants to see what's about to go down. He's got that morbid curiosity.
It's like some horrible accident. I can't look away.
This is when the movie takes a complete 180 and becomes a completely different film. It is now a Prison Break story. So,
I forgot about this.
I can't stop.
This went on for longer than it needed to, and up until the end of their little get, I was trying to figure out why in the hell this was happening in the first place.
You want to know why it happened? Because the writers wrote themselves into a corner. They didn't know how to they brought up that Gigantis likes bright lights. And so they used bright lights, and it worked. And then as soon as the writers said that it worked, they were like, shit. How do we have Godzilla destroy?
It worked.
Sorry.
It worked too well.
It worked too well, and now they wrote themselves into a corner, so they had to come up with something that would make Godzilla turn around.
So
So they come up with this entirely new storyline.
Exactly. So, okay, so we see a truck that is evacuating prisoners because the evacuation calls for everyone, not just the regular citizens. They're also evacuating prisoners, which I kind of understand it, but the rest of this I don't. So we discover that all these prisoners are the worst of the worst, or at least that's what the narrator claims. I forget what they say in the Japanese version, but it doesn't really matter.
I think it said the same thing, the worst of the worst.
Yeah, something like that. So what do you believe that the Japanese do with the worst of the worst in their cop cars? Do they, tie them down? Do they put cuffs on them? Do they separate them in
If it was America, we'd have about 5 cop cars surrounding the truck that takes them. They'd all be in handcuffs, assault weapons on both of them, high stakes locks, They'd be clearing the roads, stuff like that, like high security. If these are the worst of the worst, and they probably have their own cars too. So yeah, and since Japan is so far advanced than we are in not only social means, technology means, and public means, obviously they would do something far more extreme.
Well, you're wrong. They do none of that. They just keep them in the back of the car and just ask them nicely to sit down.
Well, like bad kids at a road trip.
I guess there was a time where Japan wasn't advanced enough.
Yeah.
This is our taxi right here. We're going to go to the next nightclub in a bit. Oh my God.
Now, here's a question. Is this a plot point for the movie, or do we actually think Japan would escort their prisoners like that?
No, definitely a plot point.
Okay.
One of the prisoners has a sudden realization. Oh my God, they didn't cuff us. So they all just they do a quick little distraction, and then they just bum rush the guys in the back, and then they steal their gun and use it to bust open the lock of the back of the truck, and then they just make a break for it.
And in the Japanese version, it looks like they planned this. It genuinely looked like they planned this. Each of them had a specific role. One guy kept the 2 guards driving the truck distracted with their body kind of blocking out the whole view while they beat the other guy in the back up. And then they steal the gun. It's like, hey, what's going on back there? Oh, this guy had a stroke again. Again? Really? This guy.
What a guy.
No. So the Japanese version, I feel like, did it better than the English version in this case. Because I can buy a stroke. Meanwhile, in the English version, I quote, the convicts threw a fit, and then the guard's just like, hey, what a guy. But no, it's so dumb how they changed it in the English version.
And so all these bad guys, what am I, 10? The bad guys. So all these criminals get out of the truck and they just make a break for it. The police officers start shooting at them, and now that these convicts have a 5-star wanted level, just like in GTA, police just kind of start spawning out of nowhere. I don't know where half of them come from.
All the while, they see the prisoners like they have night vision goggles. I think Dom was right. They have mutant powers.
That's a really good point. Where did they come from? Because this is 1959. Cell phones don't exist yet, right? We're still communicating via Morse code and landlines and letters.
Well, they had radios.
Did they have a radio?
Yeah.
Okay.
But whatever, there was 4 cops in the truck. 2 of them I think are dead because the guys just dogpiled them, and I would imagine they knocked them out. And so there's 2 guys that come out of the truck after them, but then there's 4 other guys that show up that also help, and it's weird. So there's a small group of convicts, 3 of them, that break off from the group, and they start running down this bridge. And whatever frame rate they used made this look like a Abbott and Costello bit. Like, they straight up look like the Three Stooges running down this. It's so funny.
Oh yeah, with that accelerated frame rate.
Exactly. So it's just off-putting, something about it. It's so weird.
Yeah, it looks like I'm watching. Oh my god! I remember
I got it for you. So Mo, Larry, and Curly then managed to steal a truck and attempt to make a break for it.
Larry, Mo, and Curly. It's that order.
Oh, Larry, Mo, and Curly?
It's Larry, Mo, and Curly. Or Larry, Curly, and Mo. No, Larry, Mo, Curly. Yeah, that's the order.
Are you sure?
I'm very positive because when I was a child and I went anywhere with my two cousins, those were our nicknames, okay? And I was Mo. And I was always mad that I was Mo because Mo was bald. And I was not bald.
What?
Yes.
No, Curly was the one that was bald.
Mo was bald too.
No, Mo's Lyrica. No, I thought Mo was the one with the like bowl cut.
No. We could get into this.
Fight!
But
Fight!
I distinctly remember being mad that I was Mo because he was bald and I was not. I had long hair. I was anything but bald. Anyways, we can get into this discussion. It takes away. I digress. We get back to the thing.
Anyway, so the police see them take the truck and they're like, shit. Luckily, Tsukiyoki and Kobayashi are conveniently show up in their car, and the police officer's like, hey, can you help us? They're like, fuck it, why not?
And yet, Tsukiyoki says, oh, he's not brave. You're literally chasing criminals in the middle of a Godzilla attack.
Dude, you just happened upon these criminals and you're like, sure, I'm not brave. Dude, you just openly volunteered to chase down criminals.
It's like, they didn't even like, what's the thing in America where a police officer could take your car because he thinks he needs it?
Commandeering.
Yeah.
They didn't even commandeer their car. They asked them. So it's just, regardless, this is the part where we get a chase scene where another cop car just kind of spawns out of nowhere because, again, they got that 5-star rating. And I want to bring up, this chase scene sucks in the Japanese version because, like Dennis keeps mentioning, there is like no music. It's just, you just hear the car just going around all over the place. It's so, it has no gravitas. The American version is not much better, but just the inclusion of music just makes it so much watchable.
And in the Japanese version, here's the one thing I'll mention. Godzilla, if I remember, I get that he, can be distracted by lights, yes. If the entirety of Osaka is in a blackout, he should be hearing the sirens going off.
You might be right.
As far as I know, any creature, even if they're distracted, will hear a noise and be like, what was that? What was that noise?
I will.
Not to mention all the cars crashing from everyone turning off their headlights but still driving.
Yeah.
The one thing, Dennis, I was going to bring up is that I think you're forgetting that the ocean is very good at drowning out noise.
It is. You should know this. Weren't you born next to an ocean?
I was born in Puerto Rico, yes, but then at the same time, it's above. It's something that I could just sleep to. We're talking about a giant monster here, never hearing the sounds of man, and then it's being distracted by lights and not hearing the literal sirens going off, chasing the whole GTA chase going on.
Maybe. I don't know. I could buy it, but regardless.
Yeah, I feel like we're metagaming here.
Yeah.
So
we're thinking it'd be funny if Godzilla caught them in the act.
But none of that really matters. So during this chase, we see that, I'm going to get the order wrong and I don't care. Mo, Larry, and Curly are just getting deeper and deeper into the heart of an oil refinery, which confuses me because I thought this was a fishery, but whatever.
It's Walmart.
It's Walmart.
It's Walmart. They got everything.
During the chase, unfortunately, the comedy trio just completely
beefs it.
Yeah, they beefs it. They fail their final act. It does not bring the house down. If anything, it brings the whole city down because they accidentally drive into one of the oil silos and it catches on fire. And I'm not talking like a small fire. I'm talking like biblical, like big bonfire. The dinner plate has just been rung.
Well, I don't think we need to worry about the prisoners anymore.
No. And this is one of my favorite shots of the whole movie. Once the fire starts getting big and we see, like, we zoom out, we see from the perspective of the ocean, this giant wall of fire is now erupting from this whole area. And then we cut to Godzilla, and it's the little hand puppet, and he turns his head around, and he's got this goofy look on his face, and he's got like this whole expression of like, hey, yo, let me give you some of that sip.
¿Quieres?
That's more like it, because you know when you get a hand puppet on, you gotta do all that wrist action because you're excited because everything. So it's like that motion. It's the whole hand just moving. So imagine it being that derpy. So, you turn it, and what's the word that you said, Dennis?
¿Quieres?
That's exactly what it looked like, too.
Yes.
And guess what still is in the Japanese version? Quiet. And I'm
It
just
is
like,
quiet,
God.
but it is a little creepy. I will give it credit. It does look a little creepy, but it is still... It's so goofy looking. It's so weird. So at this point, Gigantis, makes a complete 180 and starts walking towards... It's funny, they even start dropping flares behind him. Like, no, don't look there. Don't look at that. Oh, shit.
You done messed up, Aaron.
And so at this point, I love this. It's like the exact second that Godzilla puts his foot on land, the entire military does not hesitate, and they just completely unload on him.
Light his ass up.
And like I said before, I could tell that their double exposure technique, while has gotten better, it definitely looks more has more fidelity to it. The military learned how to aim this time. They could actually hit him. But I think Tyrell, you mentioned something that was weren't you mentioning before that this is very seizure inducing?
Oh yeah, because the flashes take up those they look small on Godzilla, but the flashes they take up the entire screen for that split second, and there's a bunch of them.
It's insane. That's the part that doesn't look very good, the seizure-inducing part. I'm just talking about the quality of the effect itself. Looks pretty crisp, which is awesome. It's then that Godzilla just jets start coming in. These guys actually know how to aim, unlike the last movie. Godzilla ain't having any of this shit, and just immediately looks up and is like, you better piss off, and he shoots one down with his atomic breath, and there's this really funny shot of where the plane is at full speed, oh no, this is on fire, and then it cuts to a shot of it going into the bay. It's lost all of its momentum, it's moving way too slow, crashes into the water, explodes, and then explodes again.
Carol, did you
yeah, doesn't it look like it's supposed to be flying by, but doesn't it look like it just drops straight down?
Kind of. It looks like it's on a wire. Who would have thought?
And because Godzilla's atomic breath just looks like gas, it looks like he took out that plane with his bad breath.
Tyrell, did you just DM me proving a fact about who's who in the Three Stooges?
Just really do that.
Google it just to prove a fucking point.
Sometimes you just gotta prove a point.
Oh,
I never said I was right. I'm telling you what I remember as a child. He does have a bowl cut. Still a stupid hairstyle. I'd still be mad about that.
oh,
All right,
that was
moving. Editor, keep that in. All right, moving on. So, as Gigantis is fighting, or Godzilla, or whatever, screw it, the big guy is fighting on land, who else would show up but freaking Anguirus? And he just makes landfall, and he's like, "What's up, bitches? I heard we're having a party."
And of course, as soon as he sets foot on lands, they just light his ass up too. Like, damn, son, I didn't even get up here good.
Oh, yeah, because then they realize, oh, no, we brought the other one because he's distracted. We just attracted him.
Oh, yeah, because it's a little later, but like the boss slash doctor slash... God, I hate how I'm so unclear who he is.
Hidemi's father is just everything.
Yeah. They like, he like mentions it's like, oh, crap. The flares that are out in the middle of the ocean are what drew in the other monster. Shit.
Well, that backfired.
Didn't really think that through, did you?
So after like the people like at the cannery are like, ah, crap. They're like, we smash cut to like Godzilla and Anguirus just completely tussling with each other, and it's really funny. There's a shot where they hit a crane, and I encourage the viewers, or excuse me, the listeners, to this podcast. Like, that's a really funny shot. If you go out of your way to watch this movie, the moment where they like are smacking into each other and they hit the crane, it's so fast that it's so silly looking. I really like that. I don't know why. I deemed it worthy of putting it in my notes. It was another thing to mention that the whole speed at which Godzilla and Anguirus move, like Dom mentioned way at the beginning, is just this is caused by an error where one of the cameras was not set at the speed that they were normally going to do, because what they did in the first film is that they shot it at 72 frames per second, then slowed it back down to 24 frames per second, and this caused Godzilla to have a lumbering look to it. However, there was a camera, and it seems like he decided to use all of his cameras for this, was set to a lower speed, which caused the end product to look really sped up. And this, ultimately, they were like, I don't know, the director was like, I like it. I don't.
Didn't he go, I like it, and, you know, always from that point have a camera set to those specs from that point on, and then never used that tactic ever again.
Yeah, because it looks like we're back to the Three Stooges timing.
Further proving a point.
It does look like the Three Stooges timing. And another quick fact, while Godzilla and Anguirus are tussling with each other, one of the things that you will notice is that they tried to not show Anguirus' feet, because it turns out that just how the costume was, very often you might see the actor's real feet. So there are many cleverly done composites where there is usually debris or buildings hiding Anguirus' feet, which is, I think that's pretty clever. This is one of, like, I think I'll end the synopsis here on this note. So, as much as I keep dogging on this movie, I will give it credit that the next shot I'm about to talk about genuinely captures just a modicum of the magic of the first film. There is, as the factory in the city of Osaka is being destroyed by Godzilla and Anguirus, Hidemi, from all the way across the bay, all the way at her father's house, looks out the window and sees a very haunting matte painting of like a city caught on fire, and its smokes going up into the atmosphere and lighting the entire sky with all the clouds. It's haunting. It's like genuinely scary looking. Like, could you imagine being in her position?
Her father and her betrothed is there. Oh,
Yeah,
and some other guy. But yeah.
But at the same time, I would like to bring in, well, it is a very haunting scene, and this is the other scene that I mentioned earlier, that one of the parts that the Japanese version got right, because there's still no sound, no background music for this, as Godzilla's rampaging through Osaka's industrial district. It is still idiotic for Hidemi's father and the co-workers to still be there. It is now past the point of, this is a safe zoo experience. It has gone out. Parasite X has returned. He has broken containment.
This was the inspiration for the "this is fine" meme.
The dog in the fire mean, this is fine.
So
I shit on this movie the entire time for that. There are two giant, colossal-sized monsters previously unknown to mankind causing havoc, and everyone's just standing around or like bunkering down in their homes. They're like, there's people even on the street, and the friggin' cars with the lights off are still around too. It's just like, all right, I know y'all live here, but come on, at some point y'all gotta have that base survival instinct kick in. You gotta go the opposite direction.
And look what happened in the first movie when he just poked his head through. Everyone fucking ran for the hills.
No, it's like in the first movie when all the soldiers like huddled around the car to listen to where he was because they somehow lost track of him. Then he peeks over the building. They're just like, oh shit!
And then the guy with the death scream,
Yeah. I swear, in these first two movies, you know that meme from American Dad with the werewolf just taking that kid away? I feel like Godzilla could just like snatch somebody and everyone else would just be, oh shit!
This movie is just so bad. And we're only like, what, halfway through it?
About halfway. So while I still have the faculties to do this, I'm going to bring up that the last thing about this scene is that Hidemi, after seeing this horrible sight, then silently utters a prayer, lamenting all the horrible things that are happening. And this brings up yet again that I'm curious, does this movie have something to say about, like, and even the Japanese or the American version? And if anyone in the comments can, like, point this out to me, that'd be awesome. I'd love to hear a more in-depth version of it, but let me get into it. So, because she's praying, it brings up another, like, idea of we need divine help. And so, is there a theme of religion or of the divine in this film? Because I decided to go back and look at what the definition of kaiju was again to, like, get a better thing. And it turns out that I was a little wrong in the last episode. So the term kaiju translates literally as strange beast. Kaiju can be antagonistic, protagonistic, or a neutral force of nature, but are more specifically preternatural creatures of divine power. They are not merely big animals. So this whole divine power that, like, a lot of people say that a kaiju cannot just be a big animal, which is debatable because we consider King Kong a kaiju, but that's regardless. Usually a kaiju has to have, like, something about it that sets it apart from the rest of nature. It has to have, like, an extraordinary power. Like, Gamera can, turn into a flying saucer and fly away, shoot fire out of his mouth. Godzilla is indestructible and can shoot atomic breath out of his mouth. The list goes on. King Ghidorah can shoot lightning out of his mouth, or, gravity beams.
Gravity beams?
Wait, gravity beams?
Oh, we'll get into that. We don't have time.
Can we open that real quick? Because in the first movie, didn't we learn that entire settlement on that island worshipped Godzilla at some point as a god and deity?
Yes.
And if we can, let's open this up real quick. Just remember, we have in other religions, all right, we have Jormungandr, the world serpent, who is a giant animal-like god. And then you've also got Fenrir. That's the dog, right?
You're very close. It's Fenrir.
Thank you. All right. And then I think Greek mythology also views Cerberus as a god too, right? Or some sort of deity type creature.
I wouldn't say a deity, but he's definitely a helper of a deity.
No, Cerberus himself is not a deity.
Cerberus is more of just a monster that a deity keeps as a pet.
We also see other examples of creature-like gods. So what if that's what it is? That's what they're associating it to. Like, if these other religions can have these type of gods, why can't it exist? That Godzilla is a god in the name, Godzilla.
Well,
I think it's more of just when humanity encounters things that we simply cannot explain, it's very easy for us to write something off as like an act of God, or an alien, or just something completely unknown that just defies all known physics. I mean, it's like, think about when humanity first discovered how to make bread. Like, I know we make this joke a lot, but through constant trial and error, eventually somebody was just like, okay, if I do these things in this very specific esoteric order that nobody has ever thought of before, I get this delicious solid grain.
do you realize how complicated that must have been? Because I could get into the whole bread making process. Like, those are really specific steps. How do you just stumble upon that? I'm very glad they did. I'm very, very glad they did.
But it's
Funny
that same
enough,
thing with fucking Godzilla, sorry.
But you're good. No, but you're right on terms of there. And funny enough, I think I have the opposite view that you do, Nikki. In terms of, I don't see, while you're correct, they did revere him in the first movie as a god. The tone of the movie doesn't seem to reflect that. I think it, in my opinion, it shows what can be done, what happens after an attack like this. Because the first movie didn't really focus on what happens afterwards. What happens when the big monster strikes? What happened when Godzilla strikes? The aftermath of the cleanup, the aftermath of the head count. Yes, we saw a little bit of it in the first movie, but that's only for a tiny bit before they go and get the oxygen destroyer to kill him. I feel like the theme of this movie more has to deal with the rebuilding process after a big event. Because it shows in the past scenes, it's a lot more lighthearted than the first one, with the observation I made earlier.
We were discussing this a couple last week in the Discord chat when we were trying to figure out what the theme is, because it's very obvious what the theme of the first movie is. It was a straight analogy for World War, for the aftermath of the big boy bomb, right? Big boy? Yeah, fat boy.
I like Big Boy. It's pretty funny.
No, but it's the fat boy. It's the aftermath of that nuke. So going there, you're, of course, after seeing that really obvious analogy, you're trying to find whatever the meaning for this movie is. And most media does have a meaning. And it could be a bit of both. It could just be humanity's reaction to disaster. We saw a country's reaction to disaster. This is now humanity's reaction. We saw it with, Yamada and his reaction to repeat disaster that he could see coming. And, this country is trying to rebuild. We see them going out. They're trying to find fish because they destroyed all the oxygen in the harbor, which means all the fish are dead for God knows how long out of the year. They're trying to find more. They're rebuilding after this war and this disaster and everything. And oh my gosh, what's happened? It's the same old tale of, life. When everything's good and going, shit hits the fan.
I think you're all right about that. I guess I'm just having a hang up on why they keep bringing up the divine, but I think you're right. The divine is just, it's an act of God, and how do people react to it, I guess, is the point. But listeners, please leave a comment if you have a better understanding of why they keep bringing up the fact that these two creatures are of divine origin. Well, there's other points that they'll point to later in the movie, but I am afraid that is all the time we have for today. I would like to thank you all guys for taking the time to help me with this. And we will be continuing the rest of this episode next time. Before we end today, I do want to make a shout out that one of our troopers has a new Twitch channel. Nikki, would you like to tell the listeners where they can find you?
If you want to find me, I'm on Twitch. Primarily, I'll be posting YouTube videos on YouTube. Also in Instagram, TikTok, and I'm being forced to make a Twitter account. I'm so sorry. And you can find me there as a Kemi Liar. I'm working on making sure all the names are the same, so it's easy to find. But if you find me on one, it's easy to find me on most. I'll give Turner the legit link so he can put it in the description if you enjoyed. And I go live and we play video games together, so.
All right. If anyone else has anything to say, speak now, forever hold your peace.
Just thank you everyone for watching, listening.
So we have over 10 subscribers now, and we are currently at we are over 80 views on our first episode on YouTube right now. So congratulations, everybody.
And
which one of you guys is watching the video on repeat?
Woo! It's me. Yeah, it's Turner.
I just want to say thank you for everyone who's supporting us, not just everyone here who's watching this and putting in their input. I just also want to thank everyone else who, effectively the viewers and the listeners, to listening to us rant, especially in this case, about this insane rushed movie. So thank you, honestly.
All right, troopers, that's all the time we have for today. But join us next time as we finish Godzilla Raids Again, or Gigantis the Fire Monster. And remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the podcast, and be ready for the next part dropping soon. This is Real Jumpers, signing off.